Good afternoon and welcome to the Soul Shop. I am your host, Phyllis King, and today I'm going to be speaking with healer, teacher, facilitator of workshops, executive coach, all around fascinating, wise, and kind person, Greg Liotta. But I thought it was really appropriate to start the show with take a look at some of this artwork, because I always research people I talk to, and this was something that really surprised me. You know, I've known Greg in some form off and on for a time, but I never knew he had this extraordinary gift and talent. And so I personally love art a lot, and I just thought this was amazing, and I wanted to start the show letting you guys see this. I think it needs to be seen, and there's so much of it. This is a website. I actually connected it from LinkedIn, which is LinkedIn is Greg-Liotta, Liotta.pixels.com. And as you can see, I mean, it's just extraordinary. It's so moving. It really touches you on a deep level. And let's face it, it is the holidays. What better time to consider a piece of art for your family member or yourself? I mean, look at this. If you don't feel inspired and ready to take on your life looking at this, I don't know what will make you do that, at least from my vantage point. So I thought, what better way to start our conversation than this? And this isn't even the best part of what you're going to listen to today. Greg, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Phyllis, and thank you, and thanks so much for that. That was really sweet.
Well, I don't know if it's sweet or not. I sincerely think it's incredible, and it's really moving. And I think whenever there's something that has that much energy on it can make a person feel something, I think people need to experience that. So maybe it's a compliment, but I just think it's good stuff.
I appreciate it, and really, because I tend to forget about it. I go in spurts where I make a lot of art. And then I'm channeling my energy into that, and then I'll sort of like start channeling my energy into another medium, another creative medium, and usually I just sort of like am like doing one thing. I'm writing, or I'm facilitating, or I'm teaching. The art.
Well, and we're going to touch on the art throughout our time together today, because I think it's important, and it's such an interesting dimension of what you offer in the world. So I think we're going to continue to go about this, but let's let people hear a little bit about your background. I know you have a master's in social work. I know that you've helped people in recovery. I know you've worked with some famous folks and helping them in their trials and tribulations. I know you facilitate men's groups. You're the director of the Healing Heart experience, and you help people cope with trauma. You're an executive coach. You've been published in different formats. Give us an insight into how all that came to be and what you're up to right now.
Okay, well, wow.
Just a little one.
No, that kind of describes the way I've gone about my career. And I've been on interviews at times where people have asked me, like, what were you jumping around doing? Like, why were you jumping around doing all of these things? And that kind of speaks to the way I was raised. I was born to working class parents, and so the message that I got was, go to college, get a degree, or get a union job. But whatever your job is, keep that job, and climb the ladder, or at least establish yourself so that you have like a retirement. I had no encouragement or even role modeling around how to create a vocation, right? And how to think of yourself as a vessel of vocational energy, right? And when you think about that, like the word vocation, it's it's related to the word vocalize, right? And so our vocation is our way of expressing who we are at the deepest level of who we are, right? Always just looking for a way to express my love, my passion, my my intention, and my deep driving desire to heal, and fundamentally to connect with the world. And I think like that's what the that's what the art was. When I was a when I and let me say this, I started that all of those colors that you see popping out of my art. Uh, I think I was probably about 6 or 7 years old when I don't know where I got this idea from, but I had all these beautiful Crayolas, and I would make these vibrant rainbow colors.
Mhm.
I'd just take a big piece of paper and just splatter color all over it. And then I would take a black Crayola and cover the whole thing, all of it. And then I took my fingernail and I scratched out my name.
Oh,
So my name came screaming out in these beautiful, vibrant colors.
I see.
And I got in touch with that while you were talking in the beginning about my art, and that sort of like really it says what it really is about. All of these different things that I've done, right? And some of them have been pretty interesting, and some of the places where I've gone in the world, some of the ways that I've been able to express myself through my vocation, it really is just one thing. It is me
Mm.
scratching out a space for me to be able to express all of the vibrancy and the life that I carry within myself, right?
That is so beautiful the way you put that. So an artist. You're painting a picture for us that we all can easily grab onto. But please continue.
That to me, that's what it all is. It's all art, and I've been a yoga teacher. I've been a yoga and meditation teacher. I've been an addictions counselor. I've been a race relations facilitator using intergroup dialogue as the modality. I've been a workshop presenter. Right now, I run a trauma resolution, an experiential trauma resolution program that is wrapped up inside of a rites of passage program that um, resonates with Joseph Campbell's hero's journey. I've been a therapist in the inner city. I've been reproductive health and sexuality counselor for teenagers, and I can continue to go on.
Yes.
But I don't really identify with those jobs or those roles. For me, it's all one thing.
Mhm.
And so
And
my
that one
art
thing, the one thing
and
is,
that one thing is finding the most expressive, clearest, passionate way to be able to say I am.
mm, mm,
And that was the first thing that I mean, I started doing that when I was 6 or 7 years old. I mean, I don't know. No one taught me to do that. It was, and I think that we come into this life with an impulse to say, I am.
mm.
And my name, right? This is my name. And, even, I'm not, slight little tangent, but it'll probably make sense in a moment. I'm not one of these people that is all on board with like transcend the ego, right? Or even kill the ego. You get a lot of this kind of dialogue going on in new age circles and spiritual circles,
Mhm.
and I don't buy it. I think that the ego and the personality they're they're tools. And our responsibility is to come to terms with them, to make friends with them, and then find a way to refine them in order to be able to support the clearest and the most vibrant expression of who we are.
Well, you know, that's amazingly important to me, what you just said. I mean, is that possible? Can we make friends with our ego? Do people do that?
I don't know if it's a done, like one and done
Right.
thing.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I think that it's just an ongoing, it's an ongoing process. And I think it's an organic relationship,
Yeah.
right?
But
So as
But
we get,
I really like the idea that we're not supposed to get rid of it, that somehow this is a flawed part of our beingness in this human experience. So I really enjoyed that. That's very refreshing. And I would, you know, I know I don't want to have you completely lose your thought, but I know that you're working with a lot of men in trauma and just men in general. I would think men really need that. Not that we don't all, but I don't know, am I off course here thinking that men in particular need this point of view?
well, that's an interesting idea, and there might be something to that, because men are very disadvantaged in that we are historically, generationally conditioned in every culture, just about around the world, to disregard our bodies. And I think this is a fundamental difference between men and women, where, you know, as a man, you know, you get this idea that your job is to penetrate the world through action, right? And that your value is measured by how well you penetrate the world through action. And then that becomes measured by how dominant you are, and how much you can get, how much you can be compensated for that. And there's all of this like externalizing outward kind of thing that goes on with men, that and these are some broad generalizations, because I mean I think that younger men are starting to move in a different direction. I think that, you know, we're coming back a little bit towards the middle, and you know, I think for both genders, you know, there's a little bit of maybe an awakening that's happening, but it's going to take quite some time because it's been going on for thousands of years. And so here's what it is: if you get this message that your entire value is wrapped up in how much money you can make, and how much you can build, and how much land you can occupy, and how many people you can dominate, and if that's the ethic, there is really no space in there to be able to attend to your own body, to breathe, and to acquaint yourself with what's happening inside your inner world. And it's all happening inside the body, right? The nervous system is registering every emotional impact. And I think that generally women are fortunate with respect to that. It's never really been, I don't know for how long this has been the case, but for as long as I know, women have never really been dissuaded from crying and venting and expressing what it is that is inside of them. I suppose you could make a case that I think it would be fair to say that women have been shortchanged around being able to freely express anger, right? And women suffer that. There's a consequence to that. For men, there's almost no expression. There's almost no emotional expression that is acceptable for men. And not only that, but we have no connection really with our bodies.
Well, and isn't
Joseph
that
Campbell.
interesting that we women are always trying to pull that from men, and we think that men are trying to silence that in us, and that's probably not true, but it's interesting.
Well, it's frightening. Most men are frightened. Most men I've been working with men for about 30 years now. I was a certified co-leader with the Mankind Project that's been doing rites of passage, leadership development, personal development, emotional intelligence training, and trauma resolution work all over the world for the past 30 years. And almost every man that I've ever come in contact with feels incredibly powerless around women, intimidated in a sense to even access their own emotional life or to be in relationship with people that are vibrant in expressing their emotional lives. That's just not part of the toolkit of growing up, as a man. If you fall down and you skin your knee, what you get told is stop crying, right? So there's a lot of messaging, and some of it is like overt, where you have an older man or father or an uncle telling you stop crying, right? Men don't cry. But most of it is just kind of absorbed by what we see and what we experience around us, right? All of the movies, how many cliches are there about, superheroes that are the strong, silent type, right? And they're always suffering, and they've always had a failed, marriage or something, right? And, and they're always like struggling with a drinking problem, and, deep-seated rage that finally comes out in the form of some kind of justice that they invoke, and and then we all clap and we cheer, because that's what a man is.
Right.
But that's actually a very unhealthy man.
Yeah.
And that's not a healthy way to sort of instruct, like, this is how to be a fully alive human being. And being a fully alive human being, it requires that I tend to what's going on in my body and in my inner world.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And all of this is seeking an expression. All of this, anger, sadness, grief, rage, shame, joy, fear, all of these emotions are seeking an expression. And there's no end to the avenues through which we can express these things. And what are we fundamentally seeking to do by expressing these things? We're seeking to be able to connect with each other, with the universe. And I think that is really the sort of driving force. Mm-hmm. But as a man, if you are brought up in an environment where all of your, or a lot of your messaging is just about shut it down, contain it, you can't connect, because you're busy disconnecting all of the wires inside of yourself, right? And I think women have traditionally tried to reach men or to open men up, because women generally have been, I think, more conditioned to facilitating connections on an emotional level. They see that men that are shut down like that are not safe. Mm-hmm. And then within the context of the trauma resolution work, what I see on a regular basis is that that there's sort of like a corresponding proportion between how much I shut myself down and close off my emotional expression and my capacity to experience joy and fulfillment in my life. Mm-hmm. Right. So yeah, so a lot of men come forward, and would just be amazed with the amount of, first of all, the amount of sexual trauma that men come forward with. Uh, I work in addictions, and the percentage of men who become addicted, um, because they have absorbed so much profound trauma, oftentimes sexual trauma, and they don't have the capacity to be able to heal that, or to communicate about that, or to to reconcile that pain that they carry inside. And then it just turns into some kind of escapism,
Right.
um, and then that then becomes an organic illness, and we call that addiction. All right.
Well, it clearly is, it's apparent you know this work well. If you're just joining the show at this point, I'm speaking to Greg Liotta, who is has a. It's hard to compartmentalize such a large person in these words, which is what we talked about. But you have a master's in social work, and you're a facilitator. You help men and women with trauma, and you've helped people with recovery, and you've done many other things, and you've been in an ashram. I know you're deeply spiritual and have a lot of awareness on those levels as well. But before we continue our conversation, for anyone who might have just joined in, we want to keep taking a peek at this, because this is Greg's artwork. And I'm just so blown away, because I've known you're profound on many levels, and I know you're brilliant, but I didn't know this. And every time I look at this, I am so impressed. Not and impressed, not like ego based. It impresses how I feel. I feel something with each one of these pieces, and so I just want to share this with folks and remind them. I found this link on your LinkedIn, which is Greg-Liotta, LIOTTA.pixels.com, but you can find him, and he's on Facebook too. It's really significant. I mean, I love art in general, but this really speaks to me. And I
Yeah,
think each piece has a presence that wants to help you in some way. I mean, that's my point of view. I'm not an art expert, but I certainly love all this. And I'm sure each one of these pieces must tell a story as well.
yeah. I mean, so most of this is digital. I have been working with acrylics and pastels for many years, and then in the mid around 2012 or so, I went down to live in the Caribbean. I worked at a high profile rehab down there, and
Nice.
all my pastels got ruined by the
Oh,
climate.
oh,
And all I wanted to do anyway was lay in my hammock and make art without getting messy. And I had an iPad, and so I downloaded Procreate, which is one of the best digital art programs. And I just would lay in my hammock in the Caribbean, feeling the beautiful breeze, making art. And the first thing I started doing was making hearts. So if you go back to the very beginning, you'll see tons of just hearts. And the reason why I did that was I was feeling disconnected from people, um, really disconnected in all sorts of ways. But more than anything, I felt disconnected in my heart. Like I feel sort of like a heaviness in my chest. I was isolated. It's not an easy thing to be an expat in a developing country. Um, I had just left the ashram where I had spent a year just falling in love with a spiritual path and a community that supported it. And then bang, like one day I just got on a plane, and now I'm in this place where people don't even really want me there. Right. And I thought, how am I going to open my heart?
Hmm.
What if I could paint my heart open? So I started using this modality to create hearts that were opening, and I used color as a way to give expression to what was happening. And that was my way. That was really how I started doing this. I really didn't even think of myself as an artist.
Hmm.
I was like, I'm a colorist. I like colors. I could I could care less. I can't sketch very well. I can't, I can't do a portrait. Um, I can't really, I can't illustrate something and make it look like what it is that you're looking at. But the one thing I can definitely do, I can make colors pop,
Yes,
and
most
easy.
certainly.
All I do is put it on the page, and if it makes my eyes light up, I love it. I'm going to do it. All right. And so that's how I got started with this. And I went through, now you started to get into, so that's a little bit of Christmas stuff there. I did some Christmas art a few years ago. This one here, if you stop scrolling for a sec, actually scroll a little bit more. Yeah, right there. So over on the end, you can see a painting of Chief Joseph.
Yes.
Uh, that's an acrylic painting. Uh, and all of these paintings here, these are pencil and pastel. So this is pre-digital art for me. That was something that I have been doing, many years ago. I was doing that kind of work. But this stuff here now, as you start getting towards the bottom of this, this is back to the digital. Um, and then little further up, you had
Oh, sorry,
pasted.
I changed. I went back.
Oh yeah, no, it's okay. There's a lot of pages that you can
There's
look at
just
there.
so much. I mean,
Yeah, it became a way for me to paint my heart open, and to just connect with that essential sense of creative joy.
yeah.
Um, and I think, like this is like 6-year-old Greg, right? This is like Greg before Greg had a bunch of ideas about who he was supposed to be. This is the Greg that's just connected with the vibrant impulse of creation,
Mhm.
seeking a voice in this life.
So, well, it's so remarkable, and I don't know that you don't refer to yourself as an artist, but a colorist. Okay, however you want to define it, and for this presentation, it's up to you. If you don't mind, if it's okay, do you mind sharing a little bit of your story? I know you talk about 6-year-old Greg. I mean, is the work you do today, is it inspired from some of your own, challenges growing up and your own opening and
Oh,
repression?
absolutely, absolutely. So when I was talking about the working with the men, the trauma resolution work, probably the most common kind of trauma that I've come across is spiritual trauma,
Hmm. What
and
does
that
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 mean exactly?
well, so an individual's spirituality really speaks to their connection with the universe, and maybe some idea of a creator, whatever the force is behind the universe, right? So most people have a deity, or they have some concept of God. Uh, a lot of people broaden that, and they have more of a universal concept, like the universe, right? Or maybe even uh, multiple deities, right? Or looking at nature. For many people, nature is the expression of God or goddess, or the concept of a higher power. When a child is presented with a concept that fundamentally separates that child from that higher power, and gets the message that they are less than and they are unworthy of that. Let's just use the word God just for because it's easy. All right. I think you all get what I mean here, right? When that child gets a message that I'm not worthy of God's love until I behave in a certain way to earn it, that is spiritual abuse.
Okay.
That's not an inspiring message for a child to be given, right? That's really that's sort of a Santa Claus concept, that like there's an old white man who lives up in the north or in the clouds, right? And he's got a big fluffy beard and he's watching every single thing we do, and he's checking off our good deeds and our bad deeds. And if we have more bad deeds, we're going to get a sack of coal at the end of the year. Or at the end of our life, we go to a place where there's nothing but fire and coal.
Right. Up or down.
Right?
Right.
Yeah. And right. And so a child who is presented with this version of God does not receive a compassionate, loving internal representation, or even a sense of being connected to that. It's more like I got to work to earn that. I grew up to have a second generation, actually first generation American. My father is Sicilian American. My mom, Irish Catholic from Brooklyn.
Okay.
And the two of them got married and had kids and raised us in a fundamentalist Catholic home.
Okay.
Right, where the Pope's word was like that was the end of it, whatever the Pope said. And we were deeply dedicated. Both parents were deeply involved in the church.
Oh.
And so my life revolved around the church as a child. But I don't know what it was. I don't really know what happened, but even from the point of being 6 years old, I just had a sense that that there was something about it that wasn't right. Like I was really, really driven by old, deeply embedded Catholic values and ideologies, and I was equally driven to understand my connection with God. I wanted to understand, like, how exactly am I made in the likeness and image of God?
Yes. At what
Where
age did you have? Did you always have that desire? By the way, was it
Yeah,
always in you? Kind of
yes.
calling. Yeah, interesting. Maybe we all have it, but we lose it. I don't know.
I mean, I think I got lucky because my dad was working all the time, and my mom was a young woman. She was overwhelmed with all of the children.
Sure.
And we moved to Staten Island, and there was across the street from my house, there was a wooded area. And so what I would do is, to escape everything, I would run into the woods and I would talk to the animals in there, and I would befriend trees, and I would spend like all day long essentially playing out a shamanic system.
Wow.
Where I was doing ritual at 6 years old,
Wow.
doing ritual inside the woods with all of these animals and these trees. And so already at that age, my spirituality was seeking a broader expression than what was allowed in my household. And I think I just did that because I needed to survive. And this is something I said earlier, that I think at the core of it, for all of us, we are fundamentally driven for connection, deep, meaningful connection with each other, with the rest of the universe, with our surroundings, and even within ourselves. And so I wasn't finding connection inside of the Catholicism that I was raised in. I was creating it myself, going into the woods and developing these relationships with, animist entities. And so as I as I grew, I had started going like on a by the time I got to be a teenager, I started, turning to delinquency.
Oh,
I was a good athlete, so I was starting to come out of the woods. But coming out of the woods was actually not good for me. I started spending more time in sports, and that was actually painful for me because my parents were not interested in sports, and my father really didn't care if he'd just come see me play. And so eventually I became a boxer. Yep. Yeah.
wow.
I went from track to baseball to gymnastics
Oh my goodness.
to boxing. Think,
Boxing.
it was the early 70s, and Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier, that was a big deal. And so that was where I gravitated. And so I went into all of that. And then when I went to school, I started to double minor in social work and theology. And I wasn't really sure if I was going to be a theologian, I was going to be a social worker.
A boxer who's a theologian. Don't you love it? You gotta love it. You can't make this stuff up, right?
I was really confused about myself, really.
Wow.
I didn't know how to make sense of all of the multiplicities within me that seemed to be incongruent with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think, like, for quite some time, I was going back and forth, trying to like understand who I am, and how all of these things were really all coming down to just one thing, right? Yeah. I was looking for a way to express who I am, and create safe space for it. So boxing turned out to be really meaningful, because inside the boxing ring, I got, first of all, I got older men watching me and paying attention to me and validating me. I got to experience the self-esteem that comes from testing myself in combat, and gaining a reputation for my capacity to do that.
Wow.
But also, there's something in psychology, there's something called a paradoxical intervention. Okay. So it looks like this: if somebody has, say, an impulse control disorder, and they cannot stop blowing off rage, you prescribe for them, for 5 minutes today, between 3 o'clock and 3:05, I want you to have a rage attack. The individual comes to learn that they can manage it, that they can control it. And so when I went into boxing, I discovered that I could turn my emotions on and off, that I could make space for my aggression, because there was no space for anger in my home. I could make space for it, right? And so I started like learning that I had some capacity to be able to regulate my own emotions. But then that was my sort of like my first experience with something like ritual space, where within the context of this container, there are certain rules and there are certain ways that things unfold. When I was 16, I think I was 16, maybe I was 15. And I was starting to get in a lot of trouble. I was stealing and I was fighting a lot. And my parents sent me to this retreat center in upstate New York, run by the Catholic Youth Organization. It was a weekend retreat for teenagers, and it had a profound impact on me. It was the first time I think I ever really felt seen and valued for who I was.
Wow.
And within a few months, they began bringing me back to be a peer a peer group leader.
Okay.
And then within a year, I became a teenage retreat master, and I was leading retreats at the age of 17.
Amazing. I love it.
It was. I didn't realize it was amazing at the time, but as I look back, it's like it was pretty freaking
Your life
amazing.
path was already creating itself.
It was already like unfolding, right? I was going away once a month to lead a full staff full of other teenagers and design the retreat and lead the retreat. So I did it with a retreat center in upstate New York, and then on 108th Street between Broadway and Amsterdam and Manhattan, there was another place called the Grace House that opened up, and I became the teenage leader for that thing. And this was all happened before I went to college.
Incredible.
So by the time I got to college, I was like, all right, I'm going to be a social worker. But I was so driven with, continuing to be driven by a spiritual quest that it took me 3 years to declare. I didn't know if I was going to do theology or social work.
Okay.
And at the end, I got the social work degree, and then I went to Fordham University, a Jesuit school, for my master's degree. But essentially, within 10 years after getting my master's degree, I had become a retreat master, leading these men's retreats, and also my work as a therapist was decidedly transpersonal, with much more of an emphasis on sort of a psychospiritual understanding of ourselves, and looking for a point of communion within all beings. And I don't mean just communion between people, but a point of communion between each individual, their path, their God, the universe, and each other. Right?
Beautiful.
So for me, everything's all been one thing. Yeah.
Well, incredible story, and I love hearing the threads of how it's all come together. It makes a lot of sense. I want to, before we dive into our last segment, I want to take a minute to have people once again look at your artwork, because it is the holidays. It's just, and this episode will be airing on all over the place and this week and coming up. But I just want to take another look at some of this, and if someone wants to have someone feel something in their life or have some vibrancy come into someone they care about, their experience, I hope they would consider this work, because it's so difficult, especially to find something meaningful to give. We just end up finding shoes or, gift cards or something which they don't stay with you. But a piece of art like this, it does impact your life ongoingly until as long as you have it. It means something to you.
I call it visual Reiki.
Oh, I like it.
So what I encourage folks to do is to pick one and then breathe the colors in, and just energetically fill yourself up with the colors that are calling out to you on these pages.
Yes. And if you've just been joining the show, I've already gone through a few pages, but you'll want to peruse the site. And it's greg-liotta.pixels.com, or you can find it on his LinkedIn page, and it's Liotta, Liotta, or he's a friend of mine on Facebook, or we're connected on LinkedIn as well. So easy to find if you really want to. But look at this stuff. Look at this. It's really remarkable. And who in your life wouldn't love to have a piece of this somewhere in their domain? So anyhow, we've heard a lot. You've been trying to, I mean, you're such a large entity person. It's hard to get the totality of you in these brief moments, but talk a little bit about what you're doing with people now. Can people work with you? Is it only in groups? Is it one-on-one? And what is the preferred method right now, or is there more than one?
Yeah. Yeah, well, yeah, that's a good question, because yeah, it's definitely more than one.
Okay.
You know, my work is split in a few different places. I do the trauma resolution retreats
Is
for
that like a few times a year, or is that monthly, or how does that
that's a
work?
month. Every 3 weeks, I go
Is
out
that
to a
in Texas, or is that online? Where do those happen?
So this is called the place is called The Last Resort. It's in Bastrop, Texas.
Oh, okay.
If anybody, it's for men. And if you know of anybody that is struggling with addiction, it's one of the best treatment centers. It's anywhere from 30 to 90 days, depending. And what I love about The Last Resort is, although it is on its foundation, it is 12-step oriented treatment. It's also very progressive in that they offer equine therapy.
Ooh.
They have a very strong meditation program there. There's a master who teaches meditation and presence. And they're the only place that I know of that allows this type of program that I run. It's called the Healing Heart Experience,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not a 12-step approach. It is really about going underneath the surface of the symptoms of addiction and getting right down to the core, to the root. What hurt you in the first place before you started
Excellent.
medicating yourself, right?
Yes.
And then seeking a way to bring healing to that. And we think that will help go a long way to relapse prevention, because now you're actually healing the root of whatever it is that
Yeah,
caused the addiction.
exactly.
And in addition to that, I do a different type of clinical work. I kind of stopped doing traditional psychotherapy about 10 years ago, when I came to this awareness that most people, when they come for counseling, they're looking for a way to change their experience in their lives, right? I mean, sometimes you just need to vent, or you need help grieving something, and or maybe going to an EMDR therapist might be good if you're experiencing a specific trauma. But my experience was that it has been that most people, they can't actually make the gains that they're seeking in therapy, because you come in once a week and you're talking about how your week went, or maybe you're continuing to sort of ruminate over and over about your problems, and maybe trying to find insight as to where the problems began. But my thinking is that transformation doesn't happen until we make a choice to do things differently, to take responsibility for my own emotional and mental patterns, my language patterns, and how my language patterns reinforce my mental patterns and my emotional patterns, and then repetitively, relentlessly practicing them on a daily basis. So I do a form of clinical mindset training and coaching.
Mm.
Um, Most people that I work with them in 6-week segments every morning from Monday to Friday.
Incredible.
And
Things are going to happen. Oh my gosh.
yeah, no,
Yes.
it's extremely potent.
Oh
I
my
get
goodness.
usually I'm only working with 2 or 3 clients at a time.
Well, yeah. How
Um,
could you?
and what I'll do is I'll give them a template for getting clear about their day. What am I excited about? What's my vision?
Mm-hmm.
Um, what do I want? What do I want to create today? I have a special way of working with gratitudes to sort of intensify the impact of actual gratitude work instead of just I'm grateful for the air I breathe, and I'm grateful for my family.
Right.
And I also teach access consciousness in addition to that, which is to me is the most potent. It is the most potent modality I've ever come across. I got trained by a master, and it changed my whole life. And it really is the way of hacking your subconscious, of like relearning a new way to speak to oneself. And so what I do is I give the template to my clients, and they'll fill it out. They'll take about 15 or 20 minutes with that. Send it to me. I'll read it. Then we get on a Zoom, and I provide them with coaching and training around what they wrote. And so this is for a person that is interested in really intensive transformation.
Well, yeah. Oh my gosh.
You're getting you by the end of the 6 weeks, not only has that individual transformed the way they talk to themselves and the way they think about the world and engage with the world, but they've got a guided journaling practice, habituated. They have a breathing practice, because I teach pranayama and various yogic breathing practices for resetting the nervous system, and I also teach meditation, so that by the end of the 6 weeks you will have a 20-minute meditation practice down pat, and you will never lose that. You may fall off and stop doing it, but you will never forget how to do that. Right. So you have all of the tools to transform your life, and they're inside of you. And nobody teaches us this stuff. And so oftentimes when I talk to people about what's troubling them, they're like, oh, I need counseling or I need therapy. And oftentimes I'm like, I don't think you need therapy. What you need is to learn how to use the tools that you have in order to be able to create the outcomes that you want in your life.
I love this option. Is there a name for this offering that you do? And it's obviously on a basis.
It's a mindset. It's mindset mastery intensive. If you go to my website, gregliotta.com, you'll see that offering. 6-week mindset mastery intensive.
That's wonderful. Well, I have to ask this. I know we're pretty much out of time. We could go on for hours, but why you don't have a book out? I know you're published in some various articles and things, but why is there no book yet? It's just you're busy with the art.
I'm working with an editor now.
Okay.
So yeah, something's probably coming out next year.
I certainly hope so, because you have such a vast array of experiences and so much depth, and you're really doing groundbreaking work and important work in a different way with men and people in general. But your voice isn't quite loud enough for my liking. So I really hope that will come about. And let's see, one more time. And I just wanted to remind people of this incredible artwork. I mean, I don't mean to be so aggressive about pushing your artwork, but I mean, it is the holidays, and what a perfect time to introduce people into this. It's such a feeling art. I mean, I love art and I get a feeling when I look at it, but this is so moving, and these pieces are really just remarkable, and what an incredible gift. So I hope people will check this out at greg-liotta.pixels.com. And yeah, Greg, thanks so much for being here today. I know a lot of the audience doesn't realize, but we did this once before, and technical insanity sort of derailed us, but we got to play together again. And I just always enjoy being with you so much. And thank you for everything you do and for your time today.
Thank you so much, Phyllis. I really appreciate you, and I appreciate the light that you're spreading in the world. I've been following you for a few years, and you've been an inspiration to me, like so many. So thank you.